Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Dracaena Wines. Today I am going off the rails from wine, and we are talking shrubs with Will Caines of, I said that correct, right?
You say that correctly,
All
yes.
right, woohoo! Okay, Will Caines of here we go.
Wicked Bess.
Wicked Bess. I was dropping my bottle here of Wicked Bess. So I met Will through social media on Instagram, and he was nice enough to send me some samples, of which I did a video of me making this cocktail and did it completely wrong. So I am here. I got Will here to tell me exactly what we're supposed to do, what shrubs are, because honestly, I didn't even know it was called a shrub. And we're going to go from there. So welcome, Will.
Thank you for having me, Lori. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So where are you actually located?
So I live in Revere now. I'm born and born and raised in Boston.
Okay.
My family is from the Caribbean, so that's kind of where the name Wicked Bess comes from. So you have like as a Bostonian, Wicked is just from the vernacular as a kid, and in the Caribbean, the word "best" is used to mean like awesome or sexy or something really cool. So they're kind of synonymous. So that's how you get like my parents came here from the Caribbean to New England, and that's how you get Wicked Bess.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that, see, it does actually say it on the jar that I actually read. Uh, but so tell me, how did you get into the concept of I'm going to make shrubs? What's the background? How
So
did you get there?
so it comes from like bartending, like years ago, bartending and scrolling through social media, Instagram, looking for ideas. This thing kept popping up. This idea of a shrub. I kept seeing it. I had no idea what it was. I was just like you. Like I literally thought it was like a shrub is it's a bush, right? Like that's
Right.
what I thought. But it's going into all these drinks. So I was just super curious. So I started looking into it. And the first thing you come across is the idea it's a drinking vinegar. And that was like, what? A drinking vinegar? Like you drink vinegar? And as a wine drinker, like later on, like it kind of actually starts to make sense. But that like just piqued my curiosity. And so I started really looking into it. And once you start looking into it, I don't know, I got really into the history behind it. And then you can really, from a bartender standpoint, if you're in a bar and you're trying to make cocktails in a fast way, trying to make really good cocktails, you make infusions, you do syrups, you do a lot of work beforehand to try to get that final product because you're not going to do everything in the moment. Even in the kitchen, everything's done like ahead of time. You do prep work, and the better you do your prep work, the better the final product is going to turn out. And so these shrubs kind of like just piqued my curiosity as an interesting way to develop a lot of flavors like in that prep work. Like you'll do infusions and syrups, but having vinegar in that flavor profile intrigued me. And then once I actually tasted it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then so years later, a friend and I, we were like actually like on the verge of opening our own bar slash restaurant. Um, and I was going to be in charge of the cocktail program. And so as we were kind of developing the concept, it was going to be very scratch based. And so I was, thinking of like ways that I could, do what I was just talking about, like have these interesting flavor profiles that would be really easy to do in the spur of the moment. I thought, why don't I do like some shrub based? So I started developing shrubs for this program, and then COVID hit. And
Okay.
then I had all these like ideas, and I don't know, I just started transitioning into like, why don't I figure out if I can put this in a bottle, and instead of doing it at the bar, have some way to bring that so people could do it for themselves at home.
All
And
right.
that's
So
kind of the idea.
let's backtrack a little and let's talk about what exactly what's the history of a shrub? Like so
So if we're talking shrubs, like you're asking like where the name comes from,
yeah.
it is an Arabic word meaning to drink, sharab.
Oh,
And so it's
okay.
derivative of that. And the history of shrubs, well, the history of drinking vinegar in hot climates goes way, way, way back, all the way like back to the Bible, right? Like there's instances in the Old and New Testaments of people drinking vinegar, both for its medicinal purposes and as like it has great thirst quenching properties, which is where it kind of shows up later on. So if we fast forward to like really it starts making its presence known in like the 17th century, and
Okay.
it really has its history when people started exploring on ships. That's when what's when it really starts to show up, and it starts up to show up because, well, the main reason is like one of the biggest problems for sailors was scurvy.
Right.
And so as sailors would go, they went to India and they came back with this thing called punch, or what they described as punch. And that was what they discovered. They were mixing spirits with different like citruses, and the citruses on these boats helped you prevent scurvy. So it just was a natural progression, like, well, it's delicious and it's good for my sailors, like we're not going to come down with scurvy. At the same time, they discovered not the exact same thing, but something similar in Turkey. It's called sherbet. But that was in Turkey because of Islam. They didn't use alcohol. So they were drinking it specifically as like a non-alcoholic beverage, but it's the same concept. And they were also infusing like different herbs and spices as well into all those things. At the same time that this is happening in the Caribbean, you have well, it's debatable whether or not it was the Caribbean or New England, but I'm pretty sure it was the Caribbean. But you have this idea of a switchel, and a switchel is a combination of molasses, which is the byproduct of rum, right? Like, so they kind of go hand in hand, but it's molasses, ginger, lemon, and apple cider vinegar. And that's what, if you're out in the fields, like farming in any hot climate, you're drinking switchel in that time, right? So that switchel makes its way to colonial America at the same time that they're bringing these. So there's two meanings for the word shrub. One is this fruit, the citrus, sugar, and then either rum or brandy. And then you also have, instead of rum or brandy, vinegar, right? And they both they're not interchangeable, but when you're looking at like the history, you'll see them both kind of used at the same time. But what would happen is you would take the vinegar syrup and put it in rum or brandy and call that a shrub too, right? So it's all kind of, they're all kind of connected. So, and that switchel in colonial America became also, it's known as like the Haymakers Punch, because during hay season, that's what the farmers, they love to drink it. And again, it's if you're in a hot climate, like vinegar has like these cooling qualities, and it's thirst quenching. That was when I first tasted the shrub, and I made it at the bar, like for the first time when I first discovered it and like gave it to people, like that was oh my God, this is so refreshing. It's the word that comes up like most often. It's refreshing. And it's because vinegar has a natural thirst quenching property to it, which is why it was used so often, as well as the fact that there's no refrigeration back then. And so to preserve like the fruits and berries and things, they would pour vinegar over them to preserve them. So it's also a natural preservative. Yeah, I guess that's the history, or kind of the foundation of where shrubs come from.
Well, I have to say, when we made the drink, that was the first thing that we said was, "Wow, this is really refreshing." It was like bright and, cool. It was a hot day. It was like, you were like, "Oh, it's a hot day. We'll do the cocktail now,"
Yeah.
Plus I was celebrating the Mets winning. So, I'm always looking for great ways to celebrate the Mets winning.
As a Boston fan, we have very very distinct feelings about the Mets.
Well, I'm right back at you. So when you were creating this, so I just want to show this again. This one is grapefruit, lime, and ginger. Okay, grapefruit, lime, and ginger. So I don't know if you have, if it's like a secret recipe or something, but like, how do you go about making a shrub? So like, how
Okay,
do you
so
make this?
a basic, so there's a different ways you can make shrubs, right? Like, but the basic idea is you're combining. So the shrubs that I do or that we're talking about, those are the fruit, vinegar, and sugar based shrubs. So a typical recipe is like 1 part fruit, 1 part sugar, 1 part vinegar. But obviously you can experiment and like try different proportions. So that's kind of where I've come to. And I've had chefs that I've worked with that basically like in any recipe that I've brought to them, they're like, we'll double the fruit. It'll be better. So that's kind of like instinctively, I just always double the fruit. So whatever recipe I'm doing, I just kind of use twice as much fruit. Um, and then go from there. And then so the 2 ways that you can do it, or the two main, there's a cold method and a hot method. And so the hot method, you'll take the fruit, the sugar, and the vinegar, and you basically heat them up to meld it all together to become like a syrup, and then it's pretty much complete at that point. So it wouldn't take longer than like an hour or two before you're done. Or you can do a cold method where you take the fruit and you just macerate it in sugar and let that become like a syrup. And then you take that syrup and mix it with the vinegar and use that as your shrub. And that way you keep the fruit, when you cook the fruit, like it dulls down the flavors a little bit. It tends to be a little bit more vibrant if you use the maceration process. So that's what I try to use. But no, there's no secret. It's not a complicated. It's very time intensive, and just did a lot of work in like figuring out like the exact proportions of what to use for everything.
So why grapefruit, lime, and ginger? Like, I'm
So
assuming that there's trial periods of, okay, well, this goes well with this goes well with this. So,
I mean, there is that, and then there is just from bartending for a while, you just get a sense of like flavor profiles that I think people like. Just like as scanning across like a bar, like I bet like X percentage of them would like this type of flavor, X percent, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like the basis for the flavors. And then I just made like a grapefruit shrub and was kind of like, what can I do to like make this a little bit more me? And so when I was developing my original ideas, I just had this, I thought to myself that if I had a style, it would be called New England Tiki, right? Like, so it was kind of like extension of thinking about that transit, like my parents' migration to, and thinking about like, that has influenced like what flavors I gravitate towards, what types of drinks I like, what types of drinks I like to make. And again, like thinking about like building this idea, it became like, why don't I try to incorporate that a little bit more? So the cinnamon is, I don't know, it's kind of like a tiki cheat, right? Like a lot of, so tiki is I love tiki drinks. They're very cheeky, they're very they don't take themselves seriously. I don't feel like you can take yourself seriously if there's an umbrella in your drink. Um, but when you taste like a really well-made tiki drink, they're just so intricate, right? Like they're so layered in flavors. And when you look at like the history, like the guys that originally developed like the whole tiki culture, that was their thing. They came up with these like secret sauces that nobody knew like what they were, but they had developed. Now we know like it was falernum is one, like drams, but all these like they're commonly known now, but back when they first were doing them, that's what it was. And the purpose of those was to put all these like layers of flavor. And at the base of a lot of those recipes is cinnamon, which is how it makes its way into that.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then this one is pear, lime, ginger, and jalapeno.
Yeah.
So, this one I'm excited to try also because I'm a jalapeno freak. But I had to say the blackberry, blackberry is my favorite thing. I can sit and just eat pounds and pounds of blackberries. So when that came, I was like, okay, we're gonna drink this one. We're gonna do this one first. All right. So it is fruit. It's vinegar, and so like what do
And
you
sugar,
and sugar? Okay,
right?
and are you said that it could be molasses or sugar? Like I mean, I
Or
know
honey.
molasses
Yeah,
is
you can
sugar,
do. You can
honey.
definitely do. You can use different sweeteners. You can replace. So yeah. So it has to be would be vinegar, and you can use different types of vinegar as well, right? Like the most common one would be apple cider vinegar,
Okay.
but you'll in the blackberry one, I use a combination of red wine vinegar and sherry vinegar that have been steeped in clove and cinnamon.
Oh, wow. Wow, okay. So,
So you can
go ahead.
no. So you can use so it's the basic combination is fruit, vinegar, and sugar, but you can use all different types of vinegars.
Okay. And now when you started Wicked Bess, were you thinking in terms of large scale, like selling to bars, or were you thinking more consumer, direct to consumer?
So originally, the my original thought was consumer,
Mm.
but it's a work in progress. Like everything for me is a work in progress. So I'm just kind of like I'm figuring out as I go along. To be quite honest with you, but I definitely like so part of what I enjoyed about hospitality in general, like I like being behind the bar. Like I there's nothing that makes me happier than putting a cocktail in front of someone and watch them take a sip and like, wow, that was, like that. I love that. Right. I love giving great service and having people that'll come back all the time. Right. Like those are, and so that kind of makes me gravitate a little bit more towards the direct to consumer. Um, but yes, but now I'm definitely looking at like trying to get into like retail locations and looking at those avenues as well, for
You have to
sure.
you have to go on Sharks.
they
They love stuff like
have
this.
they have there have been, I mean, I've watched every episode of Shark Tank, like literally I have. And there is at least two episodes where the pitch was a shrub. Like
Oh,
there was
really?
one, oh yeah, for sure.
Did they buy
One
it?
one they didn't buy it because the person, and so I learned from watching that episode, but the person was unclear on what it was that they were doing. Like they hadn't narrowed it down to just specifically for cocktail making. They were going because there's a lot of you can use shrub in food making, right? Like you can use it as a vinaigrette. Like there's a lot of different things that you can do with shrub. And so I think from that episode, like if we're going because I have watched every episode, it was they weren't focused enough, but they did like Ashton Kutcher was on the episode and he thought it was a really good idea.
Oh, I can see him. I think he's into like, to me, this stuff is like eclectic, cool, it's not
That's
just
the
like,
that's the vibe. That's the vibe we're going for. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just like popping open a beer and, drinking the beer or even like, I mean, I love craft beer, but like that's beer. This is, I don't know, it's more intimate, I think, because especially if I'm at a bar and they're making this for me, that like when I watch these cocktails, there's so much going into it and there's so much effort and it's a work of art when they hand that over to you versus here's a beer or even I mean here's a glass of wine, like it's art but it's different, like
Yeah. Yep.
those things are very different to me. um so how about legally wise, like what did you have to do to be able to sell this stuff, because it's not alcohol,
Right.
so
So you basically have to get it. There's FDA regulations for acidified uh, beverages, and so you have to do what's called. It has to be under what's called a scheduled process. So you have to have it tested. I had to have the recipes tested at Cornell, actually. And then what they do is they give you a final recipe that you have to follow that makes sure that it's going to fall within the scope of being shelf stable.
okay, so the acidity of it and maintaining the pH and things like that,
Exactly. And
right?
the water activity and so forth. Yeah.
Right. And so how many shrubs did you make before you like kind of started honing in on
I
what you are
don't,
making?
I don't like, to be honest, I don't know a lot, but
A lot.
like at some point, I had been making them for a while and then started discussing it with someone. And at some point, at that point, I was like, "Oh, I'm not trying hard enough." And then I started taking out, and it became like a science project, right? Where you have like, all right, how many grams of everything are going into this batch? Exactly how long is it resting at this temperature? You're right, like so. And once I took on that level of precision, um, I don't know, a few, still a few batches, and then you keep testing them. I'm never satisfied, right? I'm still not like every bottle goes out, I'm still like, ugh. But time every time someone tastes it, they're like, this is delicious. So I'm like, all right, it's like a sigh of relief, but I still get a little cringe. But yeah, it took a while.
So we have these three that you sent me, and then I had informed you I'm definitely allergic to strawberry. So you also make a strawberry one. So
Yeah.
tell us about that one.
So it's strawberry kiwi lime, and it was one of the ones. So well, just a friend of mine, who actually came up with the name Wicked Bess, because I we were talking. I told him the story about like this idea of New England tiki, but it's not really tiki. Like this is what I kind of like about tiki, but it has to kind of represent. And then I don't know. He was like on Google. He's like, "What about Wicked Bess?" I was like, "That's perfect." And so his favorite drink of all the shrubs that I had made was that strawberry kiwi lime. So it's basically just fresh strawberries, kiwi, and lime. And I left out, like all the other ones have ginger with a little added kick that kind of comes from, like, I don't know, that's definitely something that comes from the family as well, like the love of ginger. But I left it out on that one, and I just kind of put it out there because it was his favorite. Um, and yeah, I think it goes really well with tequila. I think it goes really well with vodka. It goes really well with rum. I think it makes a great strawberry Aperol Spritz. Um, so yeah.
All right, so let's go through how you should be using your product.
That was so when I was watching you do that, I was because it's very easily conceived that you could do that and make like a punch, right? Like and do like a big batch. And so, but then when I thought you were making two glasses, I was like, oh, that's a little too strong. Yeah, so
To me, I will say preface before how you tell us how you do it correctly. To us, we loved it.
yeah,
We thought it was refreshing. It was fruity. It was, it was nice. And as I told you off camera, that we're not mixed drinks people. So like in hindsight, I was like, wow, 2 ounces for, 4 ounces of this and then the soda, the seltzer water on top of it. Like, that's really not a lot of alcohol at all. I said, but that was good because we were having wine afterwards. So but so anybody who wants to make it wrong, it still tastes delicious. But we're gonna let Will
and that
explain
honest,
exactly how to do it.
that's funny. It's funny that you say that because the idea, like when I was at the last bar manager job that I had, like there was an idea that you had to develop cocktails that had room for error. Some cocktails have more room for error than other cocktails when you're making them. And that's and it I don't know exactly what would cause it, but the more intricate as you're building it, depending on what types of flavors, if you put like a little bit of too much of something, you'll ruin the whole thing. And there are some types of cocktails that you make that you can put a little too much of this, a little too much, and it's still going to taste good. Like it might not taste exactly consistent but it'll still be pleasurable. And so these shrubs 100% work that way, right? Like even if you just do it completely wrong, it might not be exactly the same thing, but it's still going to be pleasurable. It's still going to taste good.
All right. So how should we be making your wicked
So
best shrubs?
they're concentrated, and the idea is that it's going to be so. if you're making it with a type of alcohol, and you can use it, the best ones I think are rum, tequila, vodka, gin. Those are the any of the white liquors it tends to work really well. Some of them work better with the um, bourbon or whiskey. I think the blackberry works really well with whiskey. Um, but you're gonna do 2 parts of spirit to 1 part shrub, and then a splash, maybe like a half part to 1 part of soda water, depending on taste. And you can go up or down depending. Like some people like it with a little bit more shrub, like some people do, and some people like it with a little bit less. I just find that sweet spot is that 2 to 1, that 2 to 1 ratio.
Well, I guess it would matter on whether you're trying to taste I mean, I know vodka, they say doesn't have a taste if it's good vodka, so I guess, but it's a matter of if you want to taste more flavor versus more alcohol to me. And
That is absolutely, and that's kind of where where I put that ratio, because I have found like the purpose of making a cocktail is to make the alcohol taste better, right? Like to not to beat around the bush, like there's going to be a lot of people that will defy that, and alcohol is good. Like I like my 12-year-old scotch, what I love, but when we're talking about cocktails, it really is, we're talking about, even from back way in the history of cocktails, it's all about making some bad alcohol taste better. But you still have people want to feel like they're drinking alcohol. So if you disguise it too much, then that no one's happy with that. So there's this balance, right? And again, I think of everything in terms of balance, but there is this balance where you find this sweet spot where the alcohol starts to poke through just enough that you notice it, but it doesn't, you're not upset by it, right? Like it's not like you don't get that burn, right? Like, so you still enjoying the flavors, but the alcohol is still kind of poking through. And so that's where that ratio comes from. If you use a little bit less shrub, you'll have more alcohol poke through, a little bit more shrub, you won't even know. And it's dangerous. It can be dangerous. You won't even know you're drinking alcohol.
All right. Well, we didn't taste any alcohol, but considering it was only 1 ounce per each of us, it really there's really was no alcohol to taste anyway. But but other than using the entire bottle of your shrub, did I make it correct? Other
You
than
did.
that, like you use a
Good.
shaker, expect it to be in a shaker. It's in like a highball glass. We did put the ice in, right? Is that how you would serve it? Would you serve it on the
So you
rocks?
don't.
No?
So there's different. So when you do the splash, when I do the splash of soda water, or you don't even have to use soda water. You can actually use a splash of water. My concept when I was first designing them was to make it even easier than that, to make it as simple as possible. And it's almost for someone that doesn't even have the shaker, right? So the idea was just pour 2 ounces, and take a glass, pour 2 ounces of that shrub in there, or put 2 ounces of alcohol, put an ounce of shrub, put some ice, add some soda water, and then stir it. And what the soda water does, when you shake it, what you're doing, besides making it colder, you're also diluting it. And so that is kind of built into most recipes. If you look at any cocktail recipe, when you're shaking it, that final recipe has like an ounce more of water than you put into the cocktail when you were building it.
Oh.
Right. So whatever you put in, what you're pouring into the glass is including like an extra ounce of water that came from that shaking process. So I kind of pulled that, instead of you having to shake it, just splash that extra water right on there and just stir it, and you should be
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the idea.
All right. And then I don't know, like, so 2 ounces. So people are having, I don't know, how many of these are the people drinking, at a
I
sitting?
guess that depends. That depends very much on the person, I would imagine. I know there's some friends of mine that want to make like a PSA. Do you remember those PSAs, like those, like the more you know, like a
All
little,
right, right.
you should, like,
This is your brain on drugs. That way,
more like Saturday morning, like there's like a rainbow that comes over your head, and it's like I don't know, PSA announcement, but there should be some type of warning, like because you can't taste the alcohol when you're drinking them. That you can let yourself get carried away. It's a little
Right.
easy.
Yeah, because it tastes so good. You're just like, you're drinking and drinking. If and like I said, the whole 1 ounce, we would have gone really far. But we would, if we weren't getting ready for dinner, like we were drinking it as we were preparing dinner, like it was our pre-dinner cocktail, I could totally envision, oh, I would have just gone and made another one and another, if we were
Yeah.
like hanging out on a Sunday afternoon or something, because it was so refreshing and it was. Now granted, we had like a little alcohol in there, but it was so refreshing. I think it was like 89 degrees that day.
Okay.
So I mean, you could see in the video, I mean, I'm in a short sleeve shirt. The sun is like beating down,
No, it's a perfect day for it, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely was. So we're going to a bar and I want to get out of my beer and wine phase and I want to order myself a cocktail that's got shrubs in it. How do I even know what to order? Like how,
So if you went to a bar, there's no that I can think of off the top of my head. There's no classic cocktail that contains shrubs. So it would be something. But if you go to any of these craft cocktail bars, you'll typically see you have to scour the menu, right? Like you have to look under the ingredient list for all the cocktails, and there's a good chance that there's at least one of those drinks that has like a house-made shrub on there. It's a common thing just because it's as bartenders, you're always trying to come up with unique flavor profiles or different ways to, give people different experiences. And that's just another one of them. So it tends to be in most bartenders' repertoire.
so there's nothing like you know like a screwdriver, that like a
Mm,
named drink that includes certain shrubs.
No, no. So when we were talking about like the fact that shrub has two meanings to it, the one with just the fruit, vinegar and sugar, and then the other one, which is rum or brandy and sugar and citrus, so like orange. But those you'll see, those are alcoholic shrubs, and you'll see them referred to as like shrub creoles. But um, they sell those in liquor stores, but those aren't the same shrubs that we're talking about here.
Okay. Okay. All right. So tell me what it looks like. Where are you in your home making these shrubs? Do you have a facility that you're making them? Are you making them? Somebody else making them?
I do everything 100% myself. I work out of a commercial kitchen here in Stoneham. It's a very cool spot. It's called Food Rev. It's a woman-owned kitchen. Super cool woman, Lisa. Mission based. Like as soon as I saw the spot, I was like, oh, I this is the spot. So yeah, I make them. I make them there. I just go in like once a month, make a few hundred bottles, and go off and
So you
deliver.
basically you're renting the space or you're
But
renting the kitchen. Awesome. Okay. And so now these are each four ounces and you do need to refrigerate them if you don't use the whole thing at the in one sitting, right? So you need to refrigerate them. And then it also says sparkling wine. So that would be a pretty cool concept to make these with
So
like
when we're talking, so I gave you that first recipe where it was 2 ounces of alcohol, 1 ounce of shrub, and then like a splash of soda water or regular water. So you can also do an ounce of shrub and then 4 ounces of sparkling almost anything. So that includes just sparkling water. It's delicious with just sparkling water, right? Like an ounce of shrub, sparkling water, that's delicious. You can use an ounce of shrub and 4 ounces of any sparkling wine. That's delicious. I keep trying all different types of combinations. Um, rosé and grapefruit. And then I've also like just the other day I was drinking the pear lime ginger shrub with sparkling wine, and then I put a half ounce of Saint Germain elderflower, and it
uh,
was like I was like, oh my god, this is delicious. So
so is that a new shrub coming our way?
so it's the same. It's that pear lime ginger shrub that you have in your hand. So Saint Germain is just, it's a liquor, right? It's an elderflower liqueur.
Oh, okay.
And
See, I know
so
nothing about cocktails. Nothing. Elderberry to me was a plant. So I
yeah,
thought, you know.
yeah. So yeah, so it's just so the Aperol Spritz is like another variation. So you use instead of the elderflower, you'd use Aperol, and that's very like I'm sure you work like an Aperol Spritz, right? But um, so just all spritzes in general. That was one thing I kind of learned early on. Like all cocktails, they're all the same. It's all the same thing, kind of on some level. And all you kind of do is kind of exchange in one thing for something else, and then you get a bit more creative. And if you understand how like the different flavors work and how uh, I don't know, just how everything combines to work together, they all kind of end up being the same thing. Like when the original definition of like what a cocktail is, like back in like the early 1800s, is simply a liquor, and it's like a stimulating liquor with sugar and bitters, and so all it really and water. So all you're and that really to me just describes all you're trying to do is make alcohol better tasting and more interesting, and you're doing it with by diluting it a little bit. You're doing it by adding some sweet, and you're doing it by adding some bitter, and you're balancing off the bitter and the sweet a little bit. And if you can do that all right, you make something good. And every cocktail ever invented is kind of some derivation of doing that exact same idea.
Okay.
And so when you learn how like an Aperol Spritz works, you can kind of make any other kind of spritz just by subbing
different ingredients in.
Exactly.
So what I think is cool, and I guess I is that the same shrub can be used in vodka or rum or tequila, but that's got to make a whole different drink each time.
It
So
does. It does.
so it's got to be kind of cool that these ingredients can interact with that ingredient and still bring it together.
So, for example, that pear lime ginger that you have in your hand, like what to me it seems it's almost like cheating, but this is what happens, right? Like so, if we think about what a Moscow Mule is, a Moscow Mule is vodka, uh, lime, and ginger beer, right? A dark and
If you say
stormy,
so.
that's what it is. Dark and stormy is just going to be the same thing pretty much, but subbing instead of vodka, you're going to sub in rum. You have
Oh,
a
okay.
drink called a horse's neck. That's going to be the exact same thing. So the combination of lime and ginger is almost an iconic bar or cocktail combination. The pear is like a little add-on, but the main thing that kind of holds it together is that once you have that lime and ginger combination, you're kind of allowing it to work with, like I know it's going to work with all these other different, because that's how those basic cocktails are made. So that's kind of like when I designed the shrubs, I kind of had that in mind to make them the most easy to work with, the most amount of different things.
So that because everybody has a different palate for what alcohol they like.
Right. And
right.
what you have in your cupboard, right? Like what do you have in your cupboard? And
Right.
so the idea is that if you have some type of alcohol in your cupboard, I think it can work.
So the only drink that I kind of know or I've watched people make whatever is like the mojito, where they're taking the mint and they're grinding down the mint. Is that what you're doing with your fruit to make this? Like
Kind of, yeah. Well, I instead of muddling it, and I have actually done the muddling by hand, but now I use a blender. But the process, the idea is the same. But when you're macerating and getting the fruit to combine with the sugar, you want as much surface area to touch for both as possible. So for me, it just makes sense. Why don't we just blend them together? Then I can't get more surface area than that.
okay.
So I just blend them together. When you're muddling a mojito, it's almost a different process because you don't want to destroy the mint when you're muddling it. You just kind of almost want to massage the oil out of the mint.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a little bit of a gentler process when you're doing it that way. But when I'm making the shrubs, everything is going to get blended at a very high speed. So it's like just all mixed together and just like hangs out.
Like that. And then you said, so this takes you hours to
So no, I mean, it takes days. So I like when I blend the fruit and sugar together, I'll let them kind of sit together for a couple days. Then
Mhm.
at the same time that that's happening, like the whatever ingredients I'm macerating or infusing the vinegars with, those will sit for a couple days as well. And then the vinegars will get combined with the fruit mixes, and that'll hang out for a few days. And then I'll add like the ginger, that'll hang out for a couple days, and then we'll strain the whole thing and bottle it.
And then, how wine, can go through bottle shock or something like this. Does this need time to rest? Like, or are you
So
taking care of that
I
as
think
those flavors are marrying?
the and again, it's from that process, that just from trying different amounts of time between each process. There is, it's not quite the same things like wine fermentation. Like it when I do it, it's all happening in a refrigerated, so it's not allowing like a full like fermentation process to happen. Um, but there is, I have no doubt that there's a change in the way the flavor tastes from day one to day three, right? Like, so there is like a mellowing out of the flavor for sure through that whole process that I'm letting happen naturally, just letting it happen.
Okay. And now, so you have these glasses. Do you envision yourself like maybe doing pop-ups? I mean, I don't know how it works because if you're not supplying the alcohol, so I don't know I know what the laws are about pouring alcohol, but like I mean, could you be doing a pop-up someplace? Can you do like how are you
I
selling this other or is it straight Instagram and social media?
So it's a relatively new thing, and then all the like what you're describing, like these are all things like I should, but I feel like I just got my second shot the other day, so it's almost like I feel like now I can start like, and it might even be too early, but like getting out there and like knocking on doors, like all right, because I think that the pop up idea is 100% like for sure.
Right. I mean, you could do parties and show them like how you make the shrub. Like I would love to see a video of you making it. So, like maybe have a
And like
YouTube
that's one
channel.
of the next time I go in there, I think I am going to have, because it's tough, because so I pay by the hour when I'm there. So when I'm there, I'm working fast, right?
Right, right, right.
And I don't have time to set up a tripod and a camera and set shots up. So I haven't spent any time, and it's one of the things that's kind of missing. And I think I think it's a good idea. And I think I can get someone to just come with me one day and like take some shots. I think it would be cool for people to see exactly like how that works.
Yeah, I know that when I posted I don't know if you saw the comments, but there were so many people, oh my God, I love shrubs. I love shrubs. I've loved shrubs. And I'm thinking to myself, I've never even heard of this before. Yeah, I'm like, where have I been? But it definitely seems to be an in thing. And
Yeah.
and then I did do a little like Googling around. I don't see anything else like that. Like I'm not seeing companies that have this. So I think you've got,
It
like
it exists. So that's the thing, right? Like if when I can find them. They exist. They're
to
out
know how to
there,
look.
but it's not. But I think you're right in the sense that, and it's something good friends of mine, like actually my friend Jen, who's the most like, she's probably the first person that I gave my shrub to, and she was like, oh my god, I love this, and she actually became like my in my head, like, okay, you're my target market. And so I worked with Jen like from day one, like very first time I ever worked in a restaurant. And so she's a working mom, and so I was trying to figure out like, why does Jen love this so much? And she's busy, right? Like she doesn't have time. Like she's a bartender, if she could, but it would just take so much, like why bother, right? And
Right.
it just makes her life so much easier. And and when I started thinking about it that way, all of a sudden like other people started popping up, and they like it. I don't know, that's kind of there's a certain tribe that it works for, I think.
Right. Well, I'm thinking like the old days, when I was in college and we were drinking the cheap stuff or whatever, it was a screwdriver. So like the only thing we had was like orange juice. or if you went to, what was it, Sex on the Beach was cranberry juice, or,
Yeah.
something like that. That was it. Cause you had your alcohol, and the only other thing you could get was orange juice or cranberry juice or grapefruit juice or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So this is like an evolution of that. Instead of
That's
just
exactly
having
right.
garbage orange juice, right? You're getting a mixture of flavors that, and that's really did why you poured the orange juice, because you didn't want to taste the vodka. So this is really kind of an evolution of those types of drinks to make them just more crafty and cooler, and right.
That's 100% the idea. Yeah.
Right.
That is 100% it.
I love it. I love it. I think they're so cool. And like I said, I haven't opened the other two yet. But what else do you make? I know we talked about the strawberry. Are those the four flavors you make?
Those
Anything
are the
else?
4 flavors.
Okay.
There is another one that's coming out in a few weeks. It's going to be a pineapple, uh, Mandarin, lime, habanero.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
yeah, I I kind of enjoy the spice aspect of the drink. So the ginger kind of does that, but that pear lime ginger with the jalapeno, like I like the little bit of spice kick to the drink as well. And so
Yeah.
the pineapple has that.
I will say the most recently, in the summertime, I have a friend who introduced me to Tito's and lemonade, and she would chop up jalapenos, and like she would make like the big thing of it, and she would drop the jalapenos, and that was good. But you're
Yeah.
not tasting any vodka, you're taking lemon juice and jalapenos. So that's why when I saw this, I immediately thought, when I saw your jalapeno, I immediately thought of that. um I'm excited to try to just have that little kick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so tell me, where can people find you? Like, how do you sell these? What can they
So
get?
I so again, right now it's just on my website, www.wickedbest.com. Um, that's really there's a place in upstate New York. It's like my friend who named the company, his sister, she runs a bakery, Castillo Bakery in upstate New York, and she has been selling them on her shelves for a little bit. So that's kind of been my foray or entry into
Yeah.
retail to kind of see how that goes. But that's been going really well. So that's the only other place, but that's a little obscure. You're out in California, you probably don't get it. But so right now it is primarily just on the website.
And are you selling them as packages? Can they buy them individually? Like,
I
how
don't
do you?
have any. I can package them in 1, 2, 3, or 4. Typically, though, and I don't know why, but people tend to buy them in packages of 3 and 4.
Oh, okay. And one of each type thing? You have like a sampler pack?
That's that is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you pick. You can. It's not. You pick what you want. Like some people, like people have bought like I'll take 3 pear lime ginger and 1 blackberry. Like
Oh,
that's an
okay.
order. You can build it yourself.
Oh, okay. So they can build it themselves. So that's good. And turnaround time? I mean, I think
Uh,
it came fast to me from when we
yeah.
talked to when you shipped.
So it's kind of dependent on the U.S. postal mail, right? And that every time I go in there, it's an adventure, kind of. But it's been good. I would say like I say 5 to 7 days, but I feel like that's giving myself a little
Extra
extra
time.
leave.
Yeah. Oh, and that's true. You can ship this USPS,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You can,
no, and
yeah.
that is the most economical way to do it.
Yeah. And it came in a nice box, a nice little packaged box with, tissue paper and everything. So it's a beautiful presentation also.
Thank
Um,
you.
so yeah, we can't ship wine through USPS. They want nothing to do
No,
with that. It's illegal to ship alcohol, um, through
okay, that makes
through the
sense.
United States Post Service. Yeah. And then you are on Instagram.
Yep,
So at Wicked Bess, which by the
yep.
way, you want to just spell that so that people.
WICKEDBESS.
Right, excellent. And then what is in Instagram, you have a little emblem, right? On your avatar. What's your avatar?
Oh no, that's just Wicked Best spelled out. That's
Oh, okay. But it's like I guess it's circle because it's Instagram, right?
yeah.
Okay. All right. I was like, is it a little emblem or whatever? But again, I tell you, my eyes, the circle is small. That circle is small. So tell me, is there anything else that you want to talk about that I missed? I'm so excited that you came on, because I I learned a lot. I think that there's a lot of people, obviously there are because of the comments, that are interested in shrubs. So tell me if there's anything I missed that you want to bring up.
Um, I don't know. I think we covered everything. I wanted to thank you. Like just knowing I was going to have this talk with you today kind of made me go back kind of through everything and like collect my thoughts so I could understand. And what that did was it kind of reaffirmed why I was actually doing it, like why, and it just for me just going through that process, like it almost makes a little bit more sense. Like certain things, certain aspects of the story kind of click a little bit more. Like that's exactly why. Like I was in the Navy, for example, like just a little known, and there's a definitive connection between shrubs and the Navy. Like it came from right the Navy. Um, Little things like that, like or just the history of like the Switchel, the and I really hadn't thought about the idea that like when you look into the history of the Switchel, they say specifically we're not sure if it was either the Caribbean or New England, and I'm like, well, that's wild, right? Like that's
Right.
like can I be any more in the middle of that debate? But that's something that just kind of reaffirmed like when I was like working on like how do I prepare for this. So yeah, like this was cool. Kind of
Oh,
puts things a little bit more clear for myself.
oh, well,
So
I'm glad. I'm
yeah,
glad. I love helping out. We're a small business, so I get it. And it's a grind. You're
yeah,
constantly, you're a one man do it all show going on, and there's only X amount of hours in the day. And this obviously you're still probably doing. Are you still doing a full time job?
yeah,
Yep, on top of it. So, right, there's only X amount of hours in a day. And when it's something, and this obviously is so passionate to you, it's a passion for you. And, like you said, as you did more research, it really, it's so many different parts of you make sense to go down this path. So I'm happy that I can share with my listeners more about it. And I don't know, they are mostly wine drinkers, so maybe we can get them into some shrubs and give them a try. And
I look.
I'll tell you another little thing. When I first heard shrubs, what I thought was when you saw the mixed drinks and they were like putting, like rosemary pieces in it, like decoration. And I'm like, oh, okay, that yeah, it's a shrub. That's what I thought. So, so yeah. But so thank you. I learned a lot, and it's really interesting how it comes together, how you make, the process. It really is like a food pairing within itself.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy you came on. And I guess I'm actually really kind of happy that I messed it up, because I wouldn't have asked. I don't think I would have thought to ask you to come on, and explain all this if I thought I did everything right. So I'm glad I messed up.
Perfect.
And I appreciate you taking time out to share your knowledge with it. And I wish you the best of luck in the business. And if there's anything I can do in the future to help you out, just, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun. I was a little nervous, but yeah, this has been great. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, of course. You didn't seem like you were nervous. You seemed like a pro. You're all good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Well, are you going to go have some shrub now? It's
I
late
am.
there. It's late there. It's time for a shrub. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'll raise a glass. I'll raise a glass of your shrub to you tonight,
Cheers.
and enjoy. Okay. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Slancha. Let me